So the year was about 2005 when I first got my hands on Modellista. It was on the PS2 and my first thoughts of it were, the cell shading looks great, this feels really different to some other racing games out there. And actually yeah, it set a different tone as opposed to Gran Turismo and Need for Speed back at the time. Now Capcom really had something on their hands at that time. The abundance of Japanese cars from Modellista reminds me of the abundance of the so far Euro biased cars in Drive Club. So maybe Drive Club may be giving some payback to this game perhaps. But anywho, as a heavy fan of JDM cars, it felt like paradise for me for Modellista. The tracks as far as I can remember were also Japanese biased with some fine Toge roads too. Now to end off this little history lesson review thingy and to stop me from rambling too much, the only thing I really didn't like about Modellista was the game's physics. The sense of speed was great, but oh wait, lo and behold, when you approach a corner it's too much drifty action and very arcadey style handling in a game that had some in-depth tuning and a mod system, to which extremely drifty handling didn't make any sense at all. It had realism to it, but that kind of handling just ruined the game for me. So you're all wondering why I think Modellista should return, yeah? So let me tell you why, hear this out. For those that don't know, it was recently stated that Sony is partially funding and developing Street Fighter V, of which is a Capcom title. Modellista is a Capcom title. Now there needs to be more AAA games to add to the PS4's racing genre, and this will be a good IP to bring back. This is a weapon that Sony and Capcom can utilize to their advantage. It can kind of be like Drive Club, but except it's more Japanese based, kind of like the first game. So if it's considered that the game should return, then what should make it good then? Alright, for starters is the cell shading. This is the art style for the first Modellista game, and it was different, it looked great at the time it was produced, and with the power of the PS4 now, it can take the cell shading to another level compared to the PS2. Especially if it's decided that the game will also go to PC, or it can be a PS4 exclusive, whichever applies. Now, it applies not just to the cars, but the tracks as well. Like the cars now, thanks to modeling updates and all that kind of stuff, they can have like a multi-layer and multi-part 3D model, and the tracks can have some depth too, which can make for some interesting detail, and it can be quite immense. And a cel-shaded car interior, might I add, shall be quite sick to see, and it's something that I haven't really seen in the game before, so it's something new that we could maybe see. I'm pretty sure that Capcom and Sony can be really creative and push the bounds of this art style in their hands, and will make for an interesting visual presentation, just like how Drive Club was when it first launched. Secondly, the gameplay. Now I really think that if Modellista were to return, that it should follow a simulator route to its handling physics, particularly if there's a tuning system like the first game, but with some tweaks in mind. Help would be needed to get the simulator physics down, but it will make the game a whole load better. Some arcade elements for fun should be brought in too, but not make it too arcadey in the sense of handling and whatnot. And also, the sense of speed can be great in, a smart AI would be awesome, and just some overall racing fun would be great. And in terms of game performance, the desirable 60 frames per second at 1080p needs to be a priority. However, I think with cel shading it can be achieved along with some beautification with the likes of some cel shaded textures. And in terms of a career mode, even if it's linear but fun, it will be nice, and provided there's different disciplines and situations, which would be great, and it should offer some great repairability as well. Towards the content side of things, with cars, I think the Japanese bias will be okay, but there needs to be some cars from other countries as well. And I think a cel shaded 4580 Italia would be pretty sick to see, man. And I rate 140 cars would do the trick, along with about 30 tracks, excluding the reversed variants. And this shouldn't just be circus, but point to points would be great as well. And weather would be an interesting suit in Modellista, and its art style could be astonishing or funny, but it's worth a try in terms of weather. And some tracks around the world with, still the Japanese bias would be cool. And some car customization, like the body kits from the first game, would be awesome too. And another thing that the devs would have to tackle though is vehicle sound. Now in this day and age, having weak vehicle sounds and lackluster samples is no exception really. And sadly for Capcom, I think they'd have to outsource some people to do sound. However, I don't think that should be too much of a hectic job though. I mean heck, even for car models it can happen as well. But back to sound, as I was saying. Like, the sound emission from the first game is pretty unacceptable by today's standards, so it should need a bit of work in order to compare with other titles. And the next thing is online. Apart from the usual online multiplayer, some time trials and other modes, particularly for those who don't have PSN Plus, would be the best step forward. You have to accommodate everyone when there's a divide like that. So clubs maybe would be like a nice addition as well. And on to the last thing I'm going to talk about is the game's presentation. Now, something that was well received from the first game was its soundtrack. It had some very jazzy and very interesting menu concept pieces, like the one you're hearing now, and even to some very nice fast-paced modern jazz that's suited for racing. And for the next Auto Modellista, that theme of music should return. It suited the game very well, and the style of the user interface which mates it well with the cel shading should return too, but in an updated design. A contemporary but flat design would fit the bill. So that's about it really. Auto Modellista didn't do much to reinvent the wheel for racing, but it's something different and it's something refreshing. It's what the PS4 needs, refreshing an old but interesting IP. I really believe that if Capcom and Sony would follow through with bringing back such a game, then it can add to one of the good AAA titles for the Sony's racing genre, and it can bring in more players into the racing scene. Sony and Capcom could do the same as Street Fighter V in terms of funding and development. And the only way Capcom and Sony will actually make this happen though is if noise is made about it. And the noise will come from the public, meaning you, the interested person watching this video interested in playing a game like this. And you know, if people do something like that, then you never know. It could be a nice surprise announcement at E3 sometime soon. So do you want Auto Modellista back, refreshed along with new ideas and different approaches? Comment below, share with some mates, and let's see where this can go. Anyways guys, it's TayeedzSA here, and I guess I shall be seeing you guys around. Peace.